It was just another quiet evening in Chhattisgarh, India. Barkha Vasnik, a respected school lecturer, finished her classes and set off on her scooter, heading home like she always did. But she never arrived. Her body was found near a temple road lifeless, her helmet shattered, blood pooling into the dust. At first glance, it looked like a tragic accident, but investigators quickly realized this wasn't just a crash, it was an execution. What no one knew was that behind this brutal crime was the one person she should have been able to trust, her husband, Shishpal Vasnik, an assistant engineer, a father, and now the alleged mastermind of a cold-blooded murder planned with the precision of a man who had spent months studying how to kill. He didn't just snap, he trained, he researched, he rehearsed, and he thought he was smart enough to get away with it. But the truth was already leaking through the cracks, and what police discovered next would blow the case wide open. To the outside world, Shishpal Vasnik was a model citizen, a government-employed assistant engineer with a solid reputation. He had a stable job, two young kids, and a wife who was respected and admired in her own right. But behind the walls of their home, the truth was far darker. From the very beginning of their marriage in 2016, Barkha endured something no one saw. Shishpal had demanded rupee 4 lakh in dowry just a day after their wedding. The emotional abuse that followed turned into physical violence. Barkha kept quiet like so many women do. She put on a brave face for her students, for her kids, but she was drowning. By early 2025, she couldn't take it anymore. She filed for divorce, a decision that would cost her life. Instead of walking away, Shishpal began obsessing, but not in the way you'd expect. He didn't cry, he didn't plead. He sat in silence and watched crime shows, not just one or two, over 150 episodes. He studied them like textbooks, taking notes on how killers covered their tracks, destroyed evidence, and fooled police. His search history was filled with phrases like how to commit the perfect murder and how to fake your location. He wasn't grieving. He was preparing. He saw Barker's decision to leave not as heartbreak, but as betrayal. And betrayal, in his mind, deserved punishment. Shishpal didn't rush. He didn't get his hands dirty right away. He watched. He studied. He strategized. In total, he binged over 150 crime documentaries, everything from how to manipulate digital evidence to how to create an airtight alibi. It was methodical, cold, calculated. He wasn't looking for entertainment, he was building a blueprint. One of the first things he learned: cover your digital trail. So he handed his phone to trusted colleagues and asked them to make calls from different cities at specific times to trick police into thinking he was nowhere near the scene of the murder. Then he found an unregistered vehicle, a Bolero SUV with no paper trail. He knew it would be harder to track. No rental agreements, no license ties, just a ghost car for a ghost crime. Next step: hire someone else to do the killing. He didn't want to be seen. He didn't want blood on his hands, so he contacted a 24-year-old man named Kayamuddin and paid him 60,000 rupees to help carry out the plan. Together, they followed Barkha's daily route. They mapped out her timing, her routine, the exact point where she'd be most vulnerable, a blind curve near a temple where traffic is light and there are no cameras. That would be the spot. And when the day came, they executed it like clockwork. March 22nd, 2025, just after school let out. Barkha was heading home on her scooter, riding the same peaceful stretch she'd taken 100 times before. It was a narrow road near the Bajrangbali Temple, surrounded by trees, quiet and familiar. She had no idea. Two men were waiting. Shishpal and Kayamuddin had arrived earlier in the day, hiding in their unregistered Bolero SUV. They parked along the road just out of sight, engine running. As soon as they spotted her in the distance, they began to move. At the curve, they struck. The SUV accelerated, ramming into Barkha with full force. She was thrown from her scooter, landing hard on the roadside. But the horror didn't end there. As she lay on the ground, injured, dazed, barely conscious, Shishpal stepped out of the vehicle with an iron rod. He stood over his wife, the mother of his 2 children, and struck her multiple times. Not in panic, not in rage, but with the same cold precision he had studied for months. No witnesses, no surveillance, a perfect kill, or so he thought. They fled the scene immediately, leaving her body behind as if it were nothing more than the conclusion of a plan. But what Shishpal didn't realize was that every step he thought he'd covered was already unraveling. The man Shishpal Vasnik brought into this brutal plan was no criminal mastermind. Kayamuddin, just 24 years old, had no long history of violence, no gang ties, no professional training, just a man desperate enough to say yes to 60,000 rupees, the price of a woman's life. But to Shishpal, that's exactly what he wanted. Someone cheap, quiet, and expendable. Kayamuddin's role was simple but deadly: help with the ambush, carry out the attack, and disappear. And for a short while it worked. There were no cameras, no direct witnesses. Barkha's death was initially reported as a road accident. But this wasn't a professional job, and the cracks started to show. Phone records, location pings, and most damning digital footprints. Police tracked calls between Shishpal and Kayamuddin. They pulled surveillance from nearby towns. They pieced together the Bolero's movement through unofficial street footage and eyewitness reports. Within days, both men were in custody. Under interrogation, Kayamuddin broke. He confessed to everything from the payment to the attack to the plan they executed near the temple. He told investigators that Shishpal had rehearsed the alibi dozens of times and watched videos on how to stage a believable accident. It was the confession that cracked the case wide open. What began as a supposed hit and run was now exposed as a murder for hire plotted by a husband, carried out by a stranger, and motivated by hate. Shishpal thought he was clever. He thought watching crime shows, using burner phones, and handing off his mobile to colleagues would make him invisible. But in 2025, digital silence is louder than anything. Investigators pulled his call records and quickly spotted the first red flag. His phone had been active during the murder, but in a different city. Too perfect, too clean, suspiciously clean. When they checked CCTV, they found Shishpal nowhere in that city. Not a shadow, not a trace. Then they pulled data from Google search history tied to his Gmail. What they found chilled even the police. How to make a murder look like an accident. How to disable CCTV cameras. How to destroy evidence in a vehicle hit. How to avoid detection from mobile towers. These weren't curiosity clicks. These were step-by-step instructions, followed to the letter. Then came the final blow, his location history. Despite all his tricks, certain apps on his phone had background GPS enabled. On the day of the murder, Shishpal's device silently synced with a satellite, placing him exactly where Barkha was killed. Even the Bolero SUV, which he assumed was untraceable, was spotted in fuzzy CCTV clips just minutes before the attack. Not enough for facial recognition, but enough to build a timeline. Digital forensics also pulled footage from shops along Barkha's route. At least 2 angles caught the SUV tailing her. The timestamps matched. In trying to erase his presence, he left a map. Every move, every lie, Every digital fingerprint was still there, waiting for someone to see it. When the headlines faded and the handcuffs clicked shut, what was left? Two children, alone. Barkha Vasnik wasn't just a murder victim. She was a mother, a constant, the center of her children's world. Her son, just a first grade student. Her daughter, barely in class two. Too young to understand courtrooms, too young to process betrayal, but old enough to know their mother was gone. And their father, he didn't die, he killed. There's no way to explain that kind of truth to a child. No bedtime story prepares them for that. Today, they live with their maternal grandmother in Dirk safe, but scarred. Their uncle, Shubham Kuter, Barkha's younger brother, has stepped in to speak for them. He told media outlets something that stuck. These children never received their father's love, and now they've lost their mother too. Shishpal's crime wasn't just a murder, it was a family erasure. He killed the woman he vowed to protect, and in doing so, orphaned his own blood. And for what? 60,000 rupees, an iron rod, a temporary lie, and a permanent wound. Now, every morning, two kids wake up in a house without their mother's voice. They carry her memory and the silence their father left behind. The seeds of this tragedy were planted long before March 2025. Barkha and Shishpal married in April 2016. What should have been the start of a new chapter turned into a prison sentence for her. Just one day after their wedding, Shishpal demanded a dowry of rupee 4 lakh from Barkha's family. And that was just the beginning. Behind the smiling wedding photos and polite family dinners, there was a world of silent suffering. Barkha endured emotional manipulation, threats, and beatings, the kind that leave no mark on the skin but bruise the soul. She kept teaching, kept showing up for her students, kept trying to protect her kids from the chaos brewing at home. But year after year, the abuse escalated. By 2024, Barkha had finally had enough. She began preparing divorce papers, a quiet act of defiance in a culture where leaving your husband is still treated like a scandal. And that decision, it sealed her fate. To Shishpal, the idea of being left, especially by a woman who dared stand up to him, was unforgivable. His pride, his ego, his twisted obsession with control, they all snapped. He didn't see her as a wife anymore. He saw her as a threat, someone to silence, someone to erase. And so he turned to the one thing he trusted more than people, his favorite crime shows. What Barkha needed was protection. What she got was a death sentence signed not by the law, but by the man she once called her husband. Shishpal thought he'd covered every angle. No murder weapon in hand. No security cameras near the scene. A fake alibi crafted down to the minute. But justice had other plans. Within days of Barkha's death, investigators saw through the crash story. The injuries didn't match a typical accident. There were signs of blunt force trauma, deliberate, repeated. Her helmet wasn't cracked in a fall. It was shattered by blows. The vehicle used, the unregistered Bolero SUV, was tracked through camera fragments and local tips. Police recovered it and sent it for forensic testing. Then came the digital audit. Shishpal's search history, GPS logs, and even YouTube viewing patterns were seized. Every "how to kill" query was timestamped, geolocated, and linked to the exact time frame when he was supposedly miles away. And when they brought Kayamuddin in for questioning, he confessed. Under pressure, he laid out the entire plot, how Shishpal planned it, paid for it, and personally carried out the final attack. Both men were arrested and formally charged with Murder Section 302 Criminal Conspiracy 120B, Destruction of Evidence, Illegal Vehicle Use, and domestic violence-related offenses. The case is now in trial. Shishpal remains in custody, denied bail. Prosecutors are pushing for maximum punishment, pointing to the premeditation and emotional cruelty behind the murder. In court, Barkha's family demanded not just justice, but accountability. "He didn't just kill my sister," her brother said. "He studied how to destroy her, and he almost got away with it." But almost isn't good enough. The story of Barkha Vasnik doesn't end in a courtroom. It lives on in every woman told to just the just, in every child raised in a violent home, in every crime show binge that turns into a blueprint for real bloodshed. This wasn't some heat of the moment attack. This was a rehearsed, cold-blooded plan written by a man who thought watching 150 crime episodes made him smarter than the system. But what Shishpal didn't realize is that no algorithm can erase guilt. No fake alibi can hide the pain he caused. And no amount of planning can undo what those children lost. This case is a wake-up call for families who ignore dowry abuse, for neighbors who turn away at the sound of screaming behind closed doors, for a society that still thinks silence keeps families intact. Barkha tried to leave. She tried to survive. She did everything right, and still, she died at the hands of the man who promised to protect her. So what can we learn? Digital crimes leave digital footprints. Abusers escalate when ignored. And silence in the face of violence is a sentence in itself. Let Barkha's story be more than just another headline. Let it be a reason someone speaks up today. Because justice doesn't start in court. It starts when we stop pretending monsters only exist on TV.